Should we introduce ourselves before to members of the public?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You could.
Okay.
Okay.
You like, Chair?
We good? Yeah? Okay, we're live. Well, good morning, everybody. This is the Public Services Scrutiny Committee, and my name is Armand Watts. I'm the chair of this committee. Well, for the moment I am. This meeting is the annual meeting. So for any members of the public, and I'm sure there are literally thousands of them out there that have tuned in today, as I say, I'll be chairing. Penny is my vice chair as it stands at the moment. I'm going to ask all the members here at home first to introduce themselves, starting with Jill.
Hello, good morning. My name's Jill Bond. I'm County Councillor representing people from West End in Caldecott.
Malcolm.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Councillor Reverend Malcolm Lane, representing people from the Mardy, just outside Abergavenny.
Okay, thank you, Malcolm. And then Tony. Tony is a new member on this committee, and he's very welcome. He's going to be replacing Jan, I believe, and I want to say thank you, Jan, at this point. So I'll let Tony to introduce himself in a second for the contributions you've made this committee. You really have. So we're genuinely, I know all members are sad to see you go, even though you are here today and you can't keep away, seemingly. So we might see you again. But thank you so much, Jan. A heartfelt thanks. You know, you helped form and shape this committee at the early stages. It really, for a first couple of meetings, it needed to establish itself, and you helped that. Okay, so I want to say personally thank you very much. So if you'd like to say something quickly.
Just to say thank you, really.
Yeah, okay.
And I've come today because I was the one who wanted to know about vaping.
Brilliant. Well, all the best for the future. See you soon. Tony, welcome.
Thanks, Chair. No pressure on me replacing Jan then. Councillor Tony Keir, the County Councillor for Llanbaddock and Usk Ward, which is a jointly held ward with Councillor Howells, who is also part of this committee. And I'm very much looking forward to participating as best I can. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, and we've got Councillor Howells.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Marion Howells. I'm, as Tony just said, joint ward member for Llanbaddock and Usk. Thank you.
And Councillor Rook.
Hi, I'm Councillor Dale Rook, representing Chepstow Castle and Larkfield wards.
Okay, so we're going to move into the first part of the agenda, which is number one, which is to elect the chair. Now, it would be clearly wrong for me to elect myself as chair, wouldn't it? Because that's not. So I'm going to hand it over to Hazel to walk you through this process.
Yes.
Do members want me to stay sat here, or shall I go at the room, or shall I go and sit at the back? Or
Yeah. Stay there for now, Chair.
For now, Chair, I'd stay there. So this is a formal part of the process that we do for each year, because chairs do change and vice chairs each year, and some of the committee changes each year. So formal item on the agenda 2 is elect the chair for the next year. Could I have a proposer, please, and a seconder? I see a hand through Jill.
Yeah, can I propose Armand Watts to remain as chair, please?
Okay, I can see a hand up with Councillor Keir. Yep, so you second that. Okay, so that is Councillor Watts as chair for the next year, and we'll move on to appointing the vice chair.
We're going to appoint the vice chair. I would like to nominate, and I can't see any other nominations, so I'd like to say thank you again to Penny for the hard work that she's done. So obviously I'm selling Penny now to every member of the public who's listened to this, but she's been brilliant. Obviously the time she's pulled me up with pay attention, put your phone down, that kind of thing. No, it's not quite true, but she's really, really supportive, and she's made some really good points, and her experience as a former cabinet member for social services has been really, really important. So I'm really glad to say that I'm going to request that we vote in Penny and nominate Penny. So I'm looking for nominations for Penny as vice chair.
Chair, I'm happy to second that.
Jill, we've got one from Jill. I can't hear you on the.
No, I was seconding as well, so that's fine.
Okay. Yeah. So second.
Proposed by Dale.
Proposed by Dale Rook, Councillor Rook, and then seconded by Councillor Bond. Thank you very much. Thank you. So Yeah, so that's it. We're in again. I'm sorry, guys. You've got us for another year. Moving forward on the agenda, item number 3, apologies for absence. Hazel.
Chair, we have apologies from Councillor Stephen Garrett.
Okay, brill. Have we got any declarations of interest? No? Okay, yes, sorry.
Sorry, Chair, I would have to declare for the Aneurin Bevan part, but I'm not going to be here because of a funeral, so...
Okay,
so
what time do you, just for the...
I'm going at 11:15,
okay.
So I won't be here for it.
Okay, and Tony, you mentioned, so just formally, Tony, you said you were going to leave at what time?
11:45.
11:45, right?
Yeah, that's correct, Chair, yes, thank you.
Jill, you've got your hand up.
Just to say that I guess that we've all got a personal interest in the dentistry, but not a prejudicial interest.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
Users.
Okay. So, what, public open forum now, I believe, yeah? We don't have anyone, Jim. We don't have anybody, so we're going to seamlessly move into then the issue of illegal vaping. So we've got 2 officers of the authority here. Gareth's going to lead on this. If you want to Gareth, put your... Yeah, sorry, guys, can you also, I do apologise, can you introduce yourself for the sake of members of the public? Yeah, so the floor is yours, go for it.
Good morning, my name's Gareth Walters, I'm Trading Standards and Animal Health Manager, and with me.
Good morning, I'm Rachel Calman, I'm a Trading Standards Officer that works with Gareth in the section, thank you.
Right, I'll just share my screen, so hopefully you can all see the slides. Great. Right, well, first of all, thank you for inviting us here this morning to give you a bit of an update and some background with regards to vaping and illegal vaping. And I'll quickly move through the slides. First technical hitch, there we are. So, as a bit of an introduction, these are the areas we're going to try and cover this morning, just to give you a bit of background around the problems with disposable vapes and non-nicotine vapes and wider issues connected with vaping. And I'll quickly pass on to my colleague who will have more of the technical expertise. But as I'm sure you're aware, with it in the news, it's a growing problem across the UK and has been for some time. And whilst I wouldn't say Monmouthshire hasn't got as big a problem, we are fortunate in many respects that we don't appear to have the level of problems that our neighbouring local authorities have, not just with vaping, but similarly with illicit tobacco and other criminality. But we know that criminality doesn't respect borders and often spreads. So very much from a Monmouthshire perspective, we try to take a proactive response to any intelligence that we do receive of potential problems within Monmouthshire. We're also part of Trading Standards Wales, which gives us the opportunity to work with our colleagues right across Wales to ensure, again, we're all sort of coming from the same place and sharing resources as best we can. Just a little bit of background before Rachel takes over. You may not be aware that there's currently no requirement to be registered or licensed to sell vapes, just like there isn't with any tobacco products. But there is legislation planned to bring it in line with tobacco regarding displays, packaging, and again, Rachel will touch on this later on. An area of concern is with vapes that are being sold as nicotine-free, but which on subsequent laboratory analysis is showing that this isn't always the case. Like a lot of illicit products, there are wider non-compliant problems with them. So whilst 0% nicotine vapes are not regulated or required to be notified in the UK at the moment, if the product is sold as 0% nicotine, then the tank volumes and information that, again, Rachel will go into detail with, they don't have to be compliant with. So, and again, they can be sold online, they can be sold over the counter to under 18s, and they're not covered by the Tobacco and Related Product Regulations 2016. Again, another reason for having the new legislation that's pending. What I would say at the moment is the biggest issues in Wales currently are the fact there's increasing reports of children and young people experiencing nicotine dependency at a level where it is substantially affecting their health and well-being. There's sleep problems, struggling to get through lessons without vaping, other issues like coughing, breathlessness, feeling ill, or poisoning from non-compliant vapes. Issues of concern, but no known incidents of severe problems in Wales. But again, growing concern, because if they are available, it's only a matter of time until they could reach our areas. And obviously, there's so much still unknown about the long-term health implications of vaping. And at that point, I'll hand over to Rachel to take over the next slides and give you some more of the technical information.
Good morning, thank you. So the first thing I thought would be helpful to do, because we're not quite sure of everybody's familiarity with vapes, is just give you a bit of a background to the vaping market. So they were initially marketed, and they are still generally marketed, as a cessation tool for smokers to help them quit. That was the initial aim, akin to gum, patches and other devices that you might have seen out there for quite some time. Gareth's already touched on some of the legislation that controls it. It's the Tobacco and Related Product Regulations, which you've had on the statute books for about 9-10 years now. Age-restricted sales are covered by a separate piece of legislation. I brought some vapes with me today, which I'm happy to pass round. I'm not sure of people's familiarity with them. They started off as a non-disposable item. When we first saw them on the market, essentially you would have a battery that you would recharge and then a tank that you would top up with whatever flavour and strength product you were after. The regs actually stipulated, and Gareth's touched on it already, products had to be registered with the MHRA, the Medicines Healthcare Regulatory Agency, and there are product size controls. So essentially you'd see a 2 millilitre tank in a product. The age restrictions, as we know them, are 18. If an individual sells a vape, they commit the offence in their own right. There is also something called a proxy offence, where it's someone were to buy a vape for an under 18-year-old, they would also commit an offence. There is, as Gareth's already touched upon, there's no offence for, he's not touched on that, no offence for supply free of charge. That's something they're currently looking to address. There's no offence to supply a vape to an under 18-year-old free of charge. There has to be a transaction, which is a big loophole as far as we're concerned. So they are looking to address that. And there's also, as Gareth touched upon, there's no offence for the supply of a non-nicotine vape to an under 18-year-old. The original products we tended to find were not very child appealing. They did sort of fulfil the older side sector of the market, whereas in the last 3 to 4 years, and I would probably say from my professional experience, especially since we opened back up after COVID, it's been flooded with disposable vapes. So I can pass some of them around now if you like. I've got some, if I pass them to yourself, Chair. That one's quite a good one to pass around because it looks a bit like a fidget spinner.
If you want to check, Penny's going to...
Yeah,
just letting you know that Penny's volunteered to try all these vapes. Go on.
Sorry, Rachel. Does the resale value of that show that as well, that it's been increased since 3 years?
In what respect?
The retail values to show that...
The general sort of unit price, we tend to see... I'll come on to that in a little bit. The general sort of unit price is sort of held the same, but you'll probably see it in all sorts of small retail premises.
Sorry, Rachel, just more on volume. So has the figures shown that it's increased significantly?
Yeah,
right?
I would say so, yeah. So going on to the next slide, if that's okay, Gareth. So as you can see from the ones that have been... Yeah, that's a fidget spinner. Yeah, fidget spinner vape.
So to be clear, right, Councillor, who's got the fidget spinner? Right, doesn't surprise me at all. Sorry, could you just put your mic on and explain what you've got in your hand to members of the public?
I've got a very appealing looking item in my hand, which is for a youngster. I know I've got teenage children, they've all had these fidget spinners.
Yeah.
So, from the age of, I guess, 8, 9, they've had these. Kids have used the fidget spinners at school.
Yeah.
So
Looks harmless.
that's exactly what that is.
So clearly, members, it's undoubtedly targeted at a youth or very young audience, isn't it? Or but anyway,
No, that's okay, Councillor. That's absolutely fine.
To all members.
So basically, as you can see with the ones that are being passed around, they're quite brightly coloured. So if we're comparing them to other products on the market, cigarettes nowadays are very tightly controlled. They are now behind a gantry. You won't see them on open display in a shop. They have a really nasty dark green colour. You won't have any promotional information on the individual unit packets. There'll be the rather unappealing pictures and then the really clear health warning underneath. And that's prescribed in legislation. You can see from when I'm passing around that the vapes aren't covered currently by anything like that. They're brightly coloured. We see the ones you're handing around now, aside from the fidget spinner, all pretty much look like highlighter pens, I think. And we've seen some illegal ones that look like drinks cartons as well, the small drinks cartons. We also see sometimes cartoon-like graphics on them as well, so very, very similar, very, very different to the controls currently on tobacco. The pricing as well, which is up on the slide, I think the most recent one I was looking at this week, it was £6.99 versus £13 for a pack of 20 Lambert and Butler in Tesco. The way that government has priced and worked on tobacco over the last probably 15, 20 years, they've eliminated single cigarettes, they've eliminated 10 packs of cigarettes. The idea now is that you can only buy a 20, the price is increased. There's the whole smoking cessation aim behind that, but it clearly moves it out of the range of children a lot more. It's not the same with vapes. And then we've got the flavours. I've not brought these ones today, but we seized some earlier this year. They were called Vim Bull Ice, which I think was a take on Vimpto and Red Bull, a Puff Fizz Cherry and a Metamoon. And the ones I'm talking about today, I should add, are all the illegal ones we've seized. The ones I've passed around are all the illegal ones. They're the illegal ones that have been seized. Our evidence storeroom smells very, very fragrant at the moment, and then the other, you've touched upon it briefly with the fidget spinner. We've seen some which are like unicorn flavour, which we're looking at, I don't know what flavour that might be, but you see in it.
That was going to be my question today. What is unicorn flavour?
I've no idea, but you can see the age margin and that's going to be appealing to now. It's lower, it's dipping lower and lower.
Unicorn is lower.
We're not looking at 13, 14-year-olds there, are we?
The unicorn is definitely for lower. It's more like for your 6-year-old, isn't it? And the fidget spinner as well, the pretty pink. Any 3-year-old would look at that and think it was some sort of a toy. Yeah. Exactly. If you're okay to go to the next slide, sorry, Gareth. So aside from the obvious issues, the ones that we're thinking of at the moment, and some of the partners are on the meeting as well, be aware of them, is safeguarding. It's evidence external to MCC, but we're seeing vapes now being used to recruit and groom children into criminal exploitation and sexual exploitation. It's being used in the same way as alcohol, drugs and tobacco. It's just another illicit product being added to that gambit, basically. And then the other thing now, you will have probably seen this on the news more recently, TCH and spice being added into vapes. Not so much the vapes you're buying off the shelves, but they're being added to a more of a top-up design. But we are aware of instances finding themselves into schools now, these sorts of products, which is obviously a great concern to us.
Did you just say TCH? Isn't that the stuff that's in cannabis?
Yeah. Basically, it's a synthetic cannabinoid. Yeah.
Spice.
So it's you're looking at taking a device that is meant to deliver nicotine, and then you're getting a high off it now as well. So there are basically what we understand from Public Health Wales data is that products are being adulterated post-sale.
Yeah.
And then for more traditional area of interest, we look at product safety. So the ones I've passed around this morning, most of them are oversized. So I talked earlier about a 2 ml tank on a vape. I've got to take my glasses off to do this, sorry. This is a 10ml tank. I think someone up there's got a 20ml tank. So there should be 2ml. And our understanding of the 2ml tank on a disposable, well, a 2ml tank's on every vape, but on a disposable, it has. We shouldn't be seeing anything other than a 2ml. The other ones can be topped up with a larger tank, with a larger pod, but on these products, you see nothing other than a 2ml. They're generally sent to replicate smoking behaviour because they are intended as a cessation tool. So they will equate to a certain number of cigarettes, and that will be your ingestion of nicotine. That's our understanding of it. But with the 12ml and the 20ml tanks, you're seeing considerably more nicotine being ingested. And we know from vaping behaviour that people don't vape like they smoke. I'm an ex-smoker, I've given up now 10 years, but you used to use a cigarette to punctuate your day.
Yes.
You know what I mean? You'd have a cup of tea with a cigarette, you'd have a coffee, you'd have a cup of tea, you'd have it after dinner. Vaping behaviour is different. People keep the vape with them. So we're seeing instances of people getting through vapes a lot faster. So then you're looking at a much greater exposure to nicotine. Gareth's already touched upon it. We've got nicotine products that aren't covered by the tobacco and related products regs. They don't go through the same MHRA checks. But what we are then finding, and I've spoken to colleagues in other authorities, they will go in, they'll find nicotine vapes, and you'll see on the ingredients list, which has to be on the side, it will then say nicotine salt. So it's clearly got nicotine in it. Or more concerningly, you might see an over sticker, which you'll peel off, and underneath it's a nicotine product. Some testing, which we recently have had results on from a test house that works a lot with trading standards across the UK, is finding that of the products submitted to them that are non-nicotine for testing, 50% is coming back with nicotine in them. So it's why it needs to, there's other issues there. You're okay to carry on, Gareth? Oh, sorry, unless you want to...
Yeah, I was just going to pick up as well, obviously it's waste side.
Oh, sorry, yeah.
Problems. Yeah. And you'll see other examples in the news, but that was one of the more recent ones where whole recycling would have to be taken out and extinguished. Because again, it's lithium batteries, and when they crash...
Excuse me, Chair, is the microphone on, please? Can't hear very well.
My apologies, Councillor Bond. Yeah. Yeah. On your laptop. Yeah.
Gareth, could you just repeat therefore what you said, because I couldn't hear either?
Yeah, certainly. So, yeah, it's obviously the waste side of issues as well. So there's an example on screen there of a Midwest Wales fire rescue where a vehicle was on fire carrying recycling. And again, it links back to the lithium batteries that are in the products, which when they're crushed or they've contained with other batteries and pushed together, the heat exposure, etc. It leads to other wider issues. So again, it's bigger issues. Whilst the waste side of it is Natural Resources Wales, there's just is always in the back of our minds that these sort of products need to be looked at. And I know waste colleagues, have certainly identified more and more problems within our parks and the waste that's being collected from there.
Okay, thanks, Gareth. So I thought the next couple of slides is just take you through some of the work that we've been doing so far. I can't talk about specific premises, so I'm just going to talk about some of the wider work we've been doing, if that's okay. So focus initially on underage sales. Like a lot of the work we do now, we are intelligence-led, and that's just a posh way of saying we listen to the information that we get. We get complaints from members of the public, concerned parents a lot of the time, schools, the police. They're big partners in this. And there's also the ASH Wales No Ifs, No Buts reporting tool where people can report anonymously. So we gather this information and we look for patterns. We look at the type of premises involved. We look at repeat complaints. So we get more than one complaint that we've got a problem premises. We're looking at any particular employee. That we've actually had instances of that where people have cited an employee within the store that is more likely to sell. And then what we have done historically, because this is more historic work now, this has moved on quite a bit, we did initial trading standards visits. So we will go to that premises, normally me or one of my colleagues, and we will introduce ourselves, explain overtly that we've had complaints about the premises, what you're doing, what your system's in place to prevent the underage sales, and we'll go through it with them. And we do that with a lot of the type of complaints that we do, and it can address the issues. So we took that approach initially. There's another reason we do it as well, and that will be more apparent as I go into it. And we'll go on age-restricted sales, we'll talk to them about illegal vapes, and we'll go through their processes with them. Okay. Then what we do is we continue to monitor and we continue to listen for complaints, and we got more, as you can imagine. So what I would then do then is I would plan an underage test purchase operation, which you probably have heard about. All our operations now are controlled by a piece of legislation called RIPA, which is the Regulation of Investigatory Powers Act. We love an acronym. Basically, because I'm putting a camera on a child, a covert camera on a child, we have to go through an approval process, is probably the most straightforward way of saying it. I would gather all the evidence that we've had against the premises concerns, and our exercise would focus on those premises, because we can't go fishing, we can't just knock through every shop because we're putting a camera on a child. So that's why it's important for us to gather and listen to all the information that we get. I then go to my head of service, well, after Gareth, I go to my head of service, Dave, explain to him exactly what I've done to try and eliminate the possibility of needing to do this. So this is why the visits are so important. We've tried to do something else. And then once we've done that, once Dave's happy, and he's happy it's all proportionate, necessary, and justifiable, I then go and we have to get judicial approval from the magistrates. So that's the process that we go through. So then what we do then is it's pretty straightforward after that point. We send our underage volunteers into each of the affected premises. We're in the camera, and the camera is the evidence that we use to gather. And we tend to use police cadets. They're always super helpful, the police. And we've also used children from outside the authority if you can. So the first tranche of exercises happened between April and September 22. We did 3 exercises over that period across the whole county, and we had 5 sales from 5 separate premises. So that was the first piece of work that we did on it. You okay to do the next bit? Thanks, Gareth. Okay, so we followed it up. We spoke to, because there were the involvement of some head offices or wider chains, so we went to it in a lot more detail. We did a couple of PACE interviews on the shop staff, managers, things like that, and then final warning letters were issued to all the premises that had sold to our 5, sold to the volunteers. Okay, and then we start again. We monitor and we keep on monitoring. What we tend to find with something like this, with anything sort of complaint we get, you get a period of increased vigilance where for a while the complaints will drop off. Yeah, sure. And then we wait to see if they pick back up again, because if the systems in the shop are not adequate, then they will pick back up again, and that is what we found. We did several more exercises. We did another exercise between December 22 and Feb 23 with 3 exercises there, and then we did 2 further exercises in August 23, and we've had no further sales. So does that mean the problem's gone away? And I think I've covered it. It's yes and no. I think it has addressed, I would probably say, a larger proportion of the problem, but we still have a number of problem premises out there. And also we need to bear in mind that not all places sold in the initial exercise, and they were places that we had quite a lot of complaints about, otherwise we wouldn't have necessarily gone there in the first place. So there's that to consider as well. So why is that happening? Are they selling to kids that they know? If that's a possibility. Are they selling to kids they're more familiar with? Certainly if they're looking to become more risk averse, that would be a tack that would be taken. We're not writing it off altogether as an exercise, and we will continue to look to do them. But the option of us putting a child in on a regular basis causes a lot of questions to be asked under RIPA and safeguarding information. So it's not an option for us to create that sort of same relationship. It's not something we could ever look to do. So alternatively, we're looking at different routes of enforcement. We're looking at it with our police partners. I think I noticed John Crandon on the call as well. He's been extremely helpful in reaching out with some possible options for us as well. So we're considering other ways of trying to keep on at the problem that we've got. If you want to go on to the next slide, Gareth. The other thing we looked at, and this was more recent for us, was illegal vapes and disruption. basically what we thought was, as well as looking at underage sales, we need to look at the scale of the problem of illegal vapes that we've got. And we also thought we could focus potentially on those premises where we can't get a sale. Is there more than one way to look at this now? So what we did, again, overtly, one of my colleagues put together a really good, straightforward business advice pack, and that was mail dropped to a lot of the small independent retailers across the county. The aim being, I would say the vast majority of our small retailers are brilliant. They listen to our advice, they want to sell the right stuff. However, some of the intel we're getting is that there's a small minority of them that are more likely to stock the illegal vapes. So we targeted the advice across the board, and the aim being we help retailers get it right. Let's show you in a really straightforward way, because it's not easy if you haven't got Tesco or Asda's supply chain routes to know make sure what you're buying is okay. So we produced this guidance, we went, and then we followed it up with the enforcement visits. And we targeted basically a variety of shops across the county, and we also focused on the ones where we'd had continued complaints about illegal vapes. So, we seized 460 vapes. I think I put down 4 premises there. Yeah, 400. These are part of the 460 vapes we've seized. We estimated that as about £3,000 worth of stock. And basically, the idea was disruption. We take it off sale. There's like one strike and you're out. If you sell again, there will be we'll have to consider enforcement action against you. But the idea was it would be a short, sharp, let's get it off the market type thing. And the vast majority have responded. We've gone back to those premises, and we're finding that it is generally more compliant now. There is another element to that which I'll touch on in a bit, but certainly we're not seeing ones like this. The illegal vapes. But work is continuing. We did another 2 visits this week, so we are still doing it.
Yeah, and I'd just add in there as well, when you compare that then with colleagues across the country, the built-up areas are having significantly higher levels, numbers, seizing thousands at a time. So it does show that, whilst it's not that we haven't got a problem, we're not quite in the same place, fortunately, as some of our colleagues are having to deal with.
So there's other work we're doing now as well. There is, unfortunately, a bit of a recognised issue with peer selling of vapes in schools. We've also heard of anecdotal evidence of a second-hand vape resale market where a child might have a vape for whatever means, use it for a week, pass it on to someone else for a lesser price. So as a result, we've worked quite closely with the schools, and they've been really keen to involve us, which has been great. In particular, we've worked quite closely with one school who recognised they had a vape problem. We went in, we talked about the type of concerns that we had, the premises. We talked quite openly about it, which was really helpful. They were telling us where they were finding it in the school, what they were being told by the children. So we designed basically like a reporting tool where we could really get into the granular detail of where were they buying it, but what time? Because if I want to target my exercise, I want to go in when it makes obvious sense. You're going to go in at school end times and school start times and possibly lunch if they're allowed out. But we were trying to really hammer down into that granular detail. We've also done some really good work with the youth team. They were keen to pass us information as well, which has been really helpful. I know John will recognise I go to the meetings and I always bang the drum about tell us, even if you told us before, tell us if it's new information. We're always really keen to hear it. In terms of the information and standardised reporting, we're hoping to expand that. We've just had some early meetings with the schools, one of the education safeguarding team, and they're happy if we want to design like a reporting tool, they're happy to see if the schools will pick that up, and that should help us with a lot of the reporting information we need, which is great. And it really helps us target our work.
Good.
And then that's that slide done. Thanks, Gareth. And I think the next one's you.
And some further information regarding sort of work that's happening with schools and education. We had off our Healthy Schools Coordinator. There's a new curriculum resource tool that's been developed by Public Health Wales. That's been shared with schools in July. Ash Wales has had successful obtaining lottery funding to offer free professional learning, again for secondary school colleagues, and a Year 9 workshops being developed, which has also been shared with schools. Secondary schools now, I believe, have received their School Health Research Network data reports, which is regarding pupils' health and wellbeing survey data. And this survey includes the questions on the percentage of students that have tried e-cigarettes, vaping, and schools use these findings then to this report to review and plan their health and wellbeing curriculum provision. So the whole local authority data will be available then in September to sort of help that in the forthcoming school year. And also there's a plan for the Healthy Schools coordinators to follow up with the curriculum resources that have been supplied from Ash Wales during the autumn term, just to make sure they are being picked up by all schools.
Sorry, I've just seen a question as well from Councillor Keir. Sorry, I missed that earlier, regarding what age are the children with cameras with our test purchase ops. There's a code of practice we have to observe for this sort of exercise. We have to test the systems, but we're not looking to trick retailers, so we're not looking to send kids in that clearly look 18. Generally, my experience, they've been about 15, 16. So I'll expect them to be challenged. But if there's a problem premises and a premises that is lapse, it should pick them up as well. But we don't go younger than that, because otherwise, it would be a bit silly. But yeah, about 15, 16 tends to be the age group we use. Sorry, so going back to the presentation, looking at more partnership working, there's Yeah, so we've got the whole authority safeguarding group already in existence. As part of that work, they asked for a subgroup to be established just to ensure that sort of all parties interested in this within the local authority share intelligence and data with each other. So we've had a couple of meetings of that. Again, Rachel's mentioned the overlap as well with John and Andy and the community safety partnership work and the Safer Monmouthshire group. The Police and Crime Commissioner has also been doing a bit of work and invited us to take part in an event that was across Gwent. Again, Public Health Wales did a presentation, so we've got some further information around the health side of it if you'd like that to be shared later. And again, the opportunity for children to ask questions about what was concerning them. So that event was very useful. Operation Black Spear, I mentioned Trading Standards Wales earlier. Operation Black Spear came as a result of Welsh Government funding, which, as is often the case, was very sort of late in the day in the last financial year. So in order to sort of try and spend the money, it was about 145,000 altogether. And the reason that I'm more aware of it is I'm the Treasurer for Trading Standards Wales, so it all came through Monmouthshire effectively. But that allowed us to sort of put some provisions across all local authorities where we wouldn't normally have the resource maybe to do those test purchases of potentially illegal product and get it analysed. This was done centrally. The scientific services were tendered for, identified, and then we were able to sort of purchase any illegal vapes we could identify in our area, send them off for testing, and those results hopefully will be coming shortly. Also part of that is the wider disruption work. So it gave us the opportunity, if we had identified problem premises, maybe to bring in detection dog services, which again is not cheap by the day, but it really needs to be targeted at those premises where you think you've got a problem. Sorry. And Welsh Government have asked now for Trading Standards Wales to go on and put in a further bid for funding to keep on that work going over the next financial year. Also looking at developing the resources, a grab-and-go kit, which effectively enable officers maybe who don't deal with this on a more regular basis, if they do get a complaint or intel, they can just grab that kit and go, oh lovely, thank you. Thanks, Hazel.
Because he didn't break into a vape pen.
we've started participation in a proposed Gwent Vaping Alliance. So it's still in its informative stages, but it hopes to replicate the partnership work being done elsewhere in the UK, again, based on good enforcement and education being shared. And also mentioned there is the ongoing Crime Stoppers campaign. So again, part of the funding did provide us the opportunity to put a bit of publicity out there through Crime Stoppers around illegal vaping, and also any intelligence related to vaping, really, where we often know is related to wider criminal activity. So the exploitation training as well has taken place since last summer. That's what you want to add to that? No? Cool.
Okay, so obviously we've gone through what we've done so far, where we've come from, and it's looking at what's coming into the market. I said a little while ago that when we were doing our revisits, we weren't finding a lot of these anymore, well, any of these anymore. Yes, I'd like to think it's because we've taken a legal product out of the market, and that would be great. What we're actually also seeing now is there are products coming onto the market that are being designed in a way to make them legal, but make them large legal, if that's understandable. Essentially, they're designing the product to circumvent the legislation. So essentially, it becomes more difficult for us to take action on it because it is essentially a legal product to all intents and purposes. So that's very much a change in picture. We started seeing them pretty much just as we started doing this work. And you're literally going into a shop and you're like, is this legal, isn't it? You're taking it away to check, and then, no, that's fine, that can stay. But it's very much a movable feast, I would say, on that. And we're still getting, I've heard this week, people are trying to get more and more advice out of test houses and public analysts as to what could and may or may not be legal, to give us more of a surer footing when we go into our retail premises. But yeah, it's not the easiest. Then we're looking at legislation that's coming. I had sight of the draft 2025 Environmental Protection Single-Use Wales regulations, which are looking to come into effect next April. And that's primarily going to look to ban single-use vapes, which sounds great, and we are encouraged by it. However, I don't think it's necessarily going to be a panacea that will clear a lot of problems. We're already seeing 2 products on the market which comply with the new regs, which are virtually indistinguishable from some of the pre-existing disposable vapes. So I think there's going to be, it all depends on the price point they put them out for as well. So the idea would be is that you can recharge the battery, you can top up with a pod system, so it would comply with the new requirements. It wouldn't be disposable, but we're not sure if that's how people are going to use them, because if they're the same price as a disposable one, what's the motivation for topping them up? Are we going to see people still using them as a disposable product? So, we are encouraged that more and more attention is being paid to the vape problem. It's great, but I think we're very measured in how we're looking at it at the moment. The other thing is the tobacco and vape bill, which got started under the previous government and was mentioned in the King's speech last week. If it stays the same, without any major amendments, I had a look at that as well. That's looking more at bringing vapes in line with tobacco. I think it's going to looking at vape flavours and appearance, or there'll at least be the provision to make regulations for that. So that's the first time that'll be on the statute books. And they're also going to bring nicotine vapes under the control, non-nicotine vapes rather, under the control of the regs. So they will be banned for anybody under 18. And you will not be able, the loophole I spoke about earlier about free of charge vapes, that'll be closed as well, if it stays the way it is at the moment. And that's the same one that's going to, again, if it stays the same way, that will raise the smoking age. That's the same. So it's going to homogenise a lot of the age restrictions on tobacco and vapes into one piece of legislation, whereas currently they sit separately. So that'll be interesting to see how that develops as well. That's it from me. Gareth, I think you've got some...
Yeah, well, a bit I missed on the last slide really was the illegal vapes, the vapes we've had tested recently. They contain metals such as aluminium, cadmium, chromium, nickel, lead, and even with the legislation to bring it in line with tobacco, we all know there's still an illicit tobacco problem as well. And, you know, it is never a guarantee of what you could find in these products. So it might put better controls in place, but there'll always be that option of a black market, you know, until they find greater ways of, you know, of banning it altogether. And I think really that's whilst we welcome in the additional legislation and hopefully resources that will go with it, we're working as a profession to sort of do things together. So this additional funding that we're looking at within this year, hopefully we'll have some form of regional coordinator so we can manage this for us. So again, when we had the funding last year, we were asked to go out and do 20 test purchases of illegal vapes if we could find them. But you know, the first thing we said, well, how do we know what they're buying in Newport, what they're buying in Caerphilly, what they're buying in Anglesey? You know, you don't want to waste resource and duplicate things. Yeah. So again, you know, the coordination side of it is quite important. So I think, you know, if we can get sort of further funding to look at this, then, you know, that can only help, really.
Excellent, thank you both. That's a really good presentation, and you've covered, I think, most of the areas, but I'm no doubt that there'll be some questions. Well, in fact, I know there are some questions because we've had a chat about it before. I'm going to introduce Dale for the first question. Jill, I see you. So you're next in line. Tony, you've got a question away in chat there. So if you're all right then, Tony, I'm going to, even though we've reintroduced the Speak Now on the chat. So Dale's first, then Jill, then Tony. Dale.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you very much for a very thought-provoking presentation as well. Obviously, there's very little we can do currently with regards to the branding of these things and how they're displayed in the shops. But you did mention that you would continue to revisit the process that you go through when you have that intelligence-led information that leads you to visit a shop. And you've kind of explained the process of using the children with cameras to kind of find that evidence. What happens if you have that evidence and you visit and you give them the advice, everything that you said, and they repeat offend? It may just be, like you said, that the products are changing that quickly to circumvent legislation that these people would be looking to replace that stock with stuff that's new out that might kind of wiggle its way around it. Is there a process that you would then go through with those newer products that would, you know, make it so that they are able to be identified as a age-restricted product? And how do you get to prosecute, or how long do you give for people to change their ways before you get to prosecutions? And have you taken any to court?
Prosecution is always a difficult one. Obviously, every case is taken on its own merits and looked at, and often with underage sales generally, you know, we've often found that, you know, circumstances at the time, can determine, you know, what's the appropriate level of action, because it could be the seller as opposed to the business. But when we're dealing with these while you're dealing with these issues of wider products, illegal products, it brings a different element into it, because you've got that sort of fair trade element for legitimate businesses who are trying to do things right. Hence the reason you try to support those businesses to make sure they are compliant. But again, you know, if you've been in and you've helped somebody, you've given them the advice, and yet you still finding problems, intelligence doesn't always suggest, it's not always true. You know, we've always got to follow up with our, you know, our legal process. So the underage sales attempts will take place. The new legislation hopefully will allow us to, you know, like alcohol, to do fixed penalties, which is one way of doing it. But again, the default position will always have to be back to prosecution ultimately. But it is resource intensive. And once you get into the legal system, obviously it's the time frames are taken out of your hand, the costs are taken out of your hand, the legal arguments that can be thrown forward can totally take it away from the actual offences in question. But yeah, so it's not simple.
Thank you.
Sorry, could I just add that for a second? Because I think there was one point you made there about the new products versus the new products, regardless of whether they're legal or not, if they're circumventing it or moving around it, as I think you quite rightly pointed out, they will always be illegal if they've got nicotine in them. So if we find, regardless of what a child buys on one of our operations, and generally when I was running them, I would try and ask them, if they've got a big vape, buy a big vape, because then we're looking at identifying both problems in one visit. So that will always be something we'll look to address, because it will be an illegal product to sell to an under 18-year-old.
Thank you, Chair. If you just indulge me just for a split second. I was trying to get more into the mindset of the shopkeeper with regards to how can I get around this to continue doing what is obviously a profitable venture for them. So if they're continually looking for the next item that's going to replace the ones that are now being considered age restricted, how do we stay on top of that? The industry is obviously growing and doesn't want to stop. How do we stay on top of the industry rather than the sellers?
Sorry, that's a very good question. Sorry, just to bring it back again for a second, anything with nicotine, it can circumvent or not, it will always be illegal, so they will never be able to sell that to an under 18-year-old. You're right, there is a mindset, this is a very profitable business. We know that businesses are struggling on the high street, so they're looking at options of what they can sell legally. I think there are wider questions to be asked about the availability and the design of products, and we hope that in the legislation that's coming down the line, there is a feature in it where they can look at the form as well as the appearance. So we just hope that that might look at it, because at the moment we're seeing products come out on like a monthly basis, and it is a bit of an uphill battle for us as a local authority and even Trade Designers Wales on a wider basis. So yeah, you raise a really valid point.
Yeah,
thank you, Dan.
Sorry, and the illegal products entering this country, is a much bigger problem, not just with vaping. There's some investment being put into port operations, but again, there's this limited amount of checks that can be done, and hopefully they'll identify new products coming in. If they don't, it's almost down to the first colleague across the UK who can come across something and get it tested and share the intelligence with us.
Sorry. We've got Jill up, so I didn't press the button properly. So I'm going to obviously allow people to come back in, as I always do. But if you've got anything supplementary, just to move this meeting on a little bit, because I've got colleagues here that want to get away. Try and get everything in your supplementary if that's possible. I know that's not always, because it's a fluid meeting. So, sorry, Jan.
Just I'm not able to get into the chat facility.
Right, okay.
So if you and I know I'm here as a guest, so when you get to the end, please will you just come to me? Thank you.
Of course. Jill, thank you for your patience.
I'm very happy, Chair, for the councillor to step in now if would like to.
No, far away.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Chair. So thank you very much for this very comprehensive presentation. You're doing great work. Really would like to applaud you for all the work you're doing, especially regarding the restrictions that you're working under. It must be very frustrating for all of you. Also, the fact that there hasn't been going on for too long, so you haven't got all the health information that might help change people's minds about it. So yes, please, can you share what health information you have with us, which you offered earlier? Thank you, Gareth. So the action you're taking is brilliant or good. I just wondered if there's an opportunity to enlist the help of parents and perhaps ourselves to communicate more widely, because I know you've been saying you've been working with schools and whatever, because as we know, all young people have a high risk attitude due to their development, cognitive development, because we all remember it's never going to happen to me attitude that we had when we were teenagers and whatever. So I wonder if there's anything we can do to help, or you can use us to help communicate the information. And also the second question, please, can they be purchased online, and what's the percentage do we think are purchased online? Because obviously you've got good controls, and you're doing the best you possibly can with shops, but online you've got no control. Thank you.
Thanks, Jill.
Yes, thank you. Certainly, information, we try to share as much information as we can and push messages out, but anything that can be fed back to us from an intelligence perspective, information, it would be gratefully received. And again, any messages that we do get, I'll try and direct them specifically and include yourselves. The second part, sorry, it's gone from my head. Online sales, yes, definite big problem. And to be honest with you, from a membership perspective, with the schools, that's where a lot of the problems were. We do know there's a few shops, and we've targeted them where they've been identified, but a huge amount of the information initially was where pupils were obtaining them online or by other means and taking them into school and selling them, and it wasn't a local shop problem. Controls are trying to be put in place, I would suggest, but again, it comes back to the import problem, the fact that you can direct import now, and subject to how good the checks are at ports or points of entry really determines the likelihood of success of being able to stop them.
Okay, thank you very much. Just the other little bit then, are you listening to help of parents? Because I know as a parent of a teenager, I'd be all over it if I had the information about the health, whatever there is.
Sorry, yeah, so we react on complaints from parents, so we use them as quite a key form of intelligence. They can often guide us to the sources of where the child is getting the vapes from, because invariably they found them in the kid's bedroom, very, very unhappy with what they found, and I've had a number of conversations with parents. So yeah, we are. I would say we're probably a bit more reactive with parents. Whether or not we could do anything a bit more proactive, that might well be worth thinking about. But
Sorry, I beg your pardon. I mean, including them in the comms, because you're doing all these wonderful presentations with the young people. I wonder, because as I say, they're quite high risk at certain ages, so maybe the parents are the ones that are probably
that could be
concerned about their health and well-being.
Yeah, that's definitely something to think about, yeah.
And unfortunately, as we found with alcohol, sometimes the parents have a role to play, are partly to blame for them having the vapes in the first place, unfortunately. But certainly the more information we can get out there, the more peer pressure we can put on, the better.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jill. Marion, I think you're next, and then Jan after.
I think Councillor Keir was...
Absolutely, I do apologise, Councillor Keir. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Councillor Keir is next up. Thank you for pointing that
out. Thank you, Marion. Thank you very much, both. That was a very, very informative meeting, and it just, for me, asks a lot more questions to gain my knowledge. Can I just ask an initial question? Is there any evidence this is a problem emerging at all at primary school level? Or is it sort of mainly secondary issues? One of the concerns, I have as well is seeing these vapes and drivers holding, these what look to be bulky pieces of that kit. I've never actually picked one up. But that seems to be something that maybe needs to be looked at as well. If you're not allowed to, have a sandwich at your wheel of your car or a drink, holding one of these bulky vapes is a concern to me. The Second question. I noticed during the presentation you talked about your liaison with the new Police and Crime Commissioner. I sit on that board and was wondering how is the relationship between the police and trading standards? How does that operate on a practical basis? And is there anything that I can potentially do to raise it further, because I'm allowed to submit questions in these quarterly meetings I attend? Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Keir. So if I go through each one in turn, if that's okay. So the first one in relation to primary schools, no, I've not. I think anecdotally we've heard of maybe younger kids getting hold of them for older brothers and sisters, but I've certainly not had any complaints involving primary schools. It's not to say that it doesn't happen, but I've certainly not been privy. It's mainly high schools. Yeah. Driving, yeah, I'd agree. It goes back to what I was saying about vaping behaviour being different to smoking behaviour, although we all know that people used to smoke when they drive, and they probably still do. But it could well be akin to not being in proper control of the car if an accident were to occur. And then, sorry, if you could remind me of the police and crime. Yeah, police are great. Have to say, sorry.
Sorry, I was muted. Yeah, the relationship between trading standards and police, and obviously Jane Mudd is going around the county of Gwent seeking people's opinions about issues, and I'm wondering if there's anything I could help by firing questions at the quarterly meetings.
Okay. No, yeah. They have been great ever since. I mean, to be honest, we work with them quite closely anyway, I'll be honest, ever since they started helping us with some of our warrants, with counterfeit goods, to illicit tobacco visits that we do. They come with us, they help us with breach of the peace, but then moreover, the community policing teams are really helpful because of, they're the eyes and ears out there. They will be speaking to the local businesses, perhaps if they're out on their patrols and things like that. So we get a lot of information from them. I have spoken to them recently about, again, we're just trying to get a bit more granular information, not to use a cliche, but what we want to know is as much detail as we possibly can, because we want to take it to, if we can, we want to take it to the next level of enforcement. But to do that now, we do need as much information as possible. But yeah, they have been great.
That's sorry. If I just thought it might be useful if we bring in John Crandon, who's in the meeting, so who might be able to address some of those points that Tony's made, and they're good points as well.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you ever so much. If I just introduce myself briefly, my name is John Cranley, and I work for Morris County Council as a part of the community safety team. Rachel did mention that we work quite closely together, so I just put in the chat. It's probably worth mentioning that we chair in the community safety partnership, the Safer Monmouthshire Group, a monthly crime and antisocial behaviour meeting. And on that meeting, participants include youth services, education safeguarding, the police, self-registered social landlords, South Wales Ambulance Trust, South Wales Fire and Rescue Service, representatives of community cohesion. So there's a wide variety of partners, and trading standards do come on, and we very often interact with Rachel. So she's providing updates with underage sales and what's happening, throughout the county on a monthly basis, providing us with updates, which is very, very helpful. And I just wanted to put on record our thanks for Rachel's participation in those meetings. It is very, very helpful. I know the other partners find it helpful, and it provides us with a picture of what's going on across Monmouthshire in relation to the underage sale of the vapes that we've been discussing today. So thanks ever so much.
Thanks, John. If you want to come back, Rachel.
Yeah, if that's okay. Thanks, John. That was very kind. From my perspective, attending is great. It opens up us to so many partners to receive information from. And I know I talk about banging the drum about vapes, and I am a bit of a bore every time, but it is so helpful for us. So, yeah, thanks. Thank you.
Councillor Kerr, are you satisfied with that answer? Have you got any supplementaries? No? That's great. Okay. Thank you. So we got Marion up next then.
Thank you, Chair. I think thank you, Gareth and Rachel. The presentation very good. My question, I'm coming in here before, and was do we have any hotspots in Monmouthshire? I think you've already covered that by the identification of the work you've been doing. So, but for any residents watching, how would they report it? Do they report direct to trading standards or the police? What's the procedure procedure that they would need to follow? Can they do it through the MyMon app or whatever? So that's one question. And as with Councillor Bond there, I did speak to a 16-year-old who told me that they weren't properly informed of the health damage vaping can do. They know that smoking cigarettes is harmful, but vaping, no one knows the damage, and therefore no real deterrent. So again, working with the partnership teams that you are, so that education, I guess, is going through the schools as well. But I guess that the problem is there isn't that much evidence to show, with smoking cigarettes, we know it's going to be, a high risk of cancer, but there's no risk, so the deterrent. And just a final question, sort of illegal sales, are they blatant? Are they, or under the counter sales? How can, as residents or councillors, how can we spot it? Yeah, that's about it. Thanks.
Okay, so in terms of reporting, you can report it via the app. You're welcome to report it to the Trading Standards email address, which is just tradingstandards@monmouthshire.gov.uk. If they're happy to leave their details, it's always really helpful for us, because we'll often have more questions, because we might know about the premises, so we might want to clarify certain things, but we appreciate that not everybody wants to report and leave their name, and that's also fine if you want to report anonymously. I think Ash Wales has the reporting tool as well, but you're more than welcome to report to us directly. Yes, some of the sales are blatant. Yes, they are. Some of them aren't, but some have been. In terms of what is then reported to us thereafter, a child is seen walking from the premises holding a vape. So that helps inform. It's not a case of, sometimes you might see a kid coming in putting something in their bag, and that gets reported to us. But often it'll be a case of, I saw a child come out of a shop holding a vape, and then they walked 100 yards down the road and started using it, or something like that. So yeah, it can be. So the sales aren't necessarily, sorry, misnomer there, the sales aren't necessarily blatant within the shop environment necessarily, because in our earlier underage sales, some of our previous ones that we've done, you'd put an officer in there for safety purposes with them. We've had to use other devices now, because as soon as you put an adult in a shop with a kid, they're not going to sell, because they'll think that the adult is observing them. So the sales themselves might not be that flagrant, but certainly the behaviour of the kids just sort of coming out and using them, yeah, it's pretty obvious. And that does help. That does help us then to know.
And you're right, until the research is there to really drill home the messages about the health issues and problems. Yeah. Until the information is there, and that can be, educated to the public in general, it's really a case of, we've seen some shocking information coming from America, because they're a little bit ahead of us. So there's research starting to come out. There's ongoing work within the UK. I know Public Health Wales, NHS generally are focusing some work on it, but again, we're not privy yet to that information. But as soon as we get information, we'll be sharing it to put people off.
Thank you, Miriam. Just as a point, they can also report it to the local councillor as well, and we can pass that information on. But let's not make ourselves completely redundant here. Jan, thank you for your patience.
Oh, thank you, everybody. Thank you for your great presentations, and it's lovely to have some props to look at. And thank you, everybody, for the questions you've asked, actually. I think we've been quite good this morning. Well done, everyone. There's just a couple of things that I really want to dig a little bit deeper into, and it's around internet sales. What you're talking about then is the import, isn't it? How strong are those controls? I mean, how much do we think is really coming in? That's sort of like the one area that I'd like to explore a bit more. I noticed you had an online session on the 2nd of July. The poster I noticed. I didn't see that anywhere, and I'm a community councillor as well as a county councillor, and most of the people in this room are, and we know we've got a great network there, which is underused. If you get it out to the community and town councillors, they'll get it out on their village Facebooks and things. So, it's great doing these events, but it's getting to people, isn't it? It's as simple as that, getting to people. Okay. I was also quite interested in what you were saying about TCH being added, you know. I mean, I know I'm quite aware that you can buy things online. You can buy, you know, gummy sweets that have got TCH in, and you can buy muesli bars, you know, quite at ease, at will, in quantity. You know, so again, it's coming back to that. How do we stop it? How do we stop that? And I think the third thing I really want to ask about is... I forgot what it was now. Oh dear. Where they're manufactured. Are there manufacturers in the UK? You know, are there controls on manufacture in the UK? Are they manufactured in Europe? Or are they coming from China or, you know, the Middle East or whatever, you know? So what regulations are there on manufacture? So those are my three areas, really, that I'd like to learn a bit more about. I know you're not going to be able to give me the answers.
No.
I'll stop it.
Certainly, as you mentioned, the online orders, the imports, very much down to the controls at point of entry. We've got no controls locally that we're able to deal with unless we get intelligence from somebody who knows they've been imported and getting them through successfully, and then that's something we could potentially follow up on. Otherwise, it's very much down to the retailer checks who do online deliveries and orders. So like the underage sales test purchases in shops, we can look at doing that. Again, if the intelligence points us that way. Yes, the event on the 2nd, that was actually a Police and Crime Commissioner event. But yeah, certainly agree that anything like that, if we could share as wide as possible, because I don't think the attendance was as great for it, you know, being a Gwent-wide event.
Coming back to that, I certainly didn't know anything about that.
No.
And you know, if my clerk to council or my community council gets it, it goes out, and we all get that. So it certainly didn't come past. No. By Monmouthshire or by my county community council. And
manufacturing, Rachel might be a little bit more aware, but I would say the vast majority are manufactured abroad. Whether I'd say China is probably a fair likelihood, but I haven't seen any specific stats.
No, I've not seen any specific, but yeah, I'd say the vast majority probably come from Far East.
So no MHRA control?
No, they will be. They'll need to be. So basically, they're imported. They have to have a UK importer. This is the way it should work. Right. They have to have a UK importer. Like a lot of the stuff, a lot of the product safety controls. If you're bringing it in from outside of Britain now, it used to be the EU, but outside of Britain now, you need a UK importer who then becomes the buck stops with them. Okay. They are responsible for the checks. So some of the work we do is follow it up the tree. That's part of our bread and butter work within trading standards. We might find a local issue, but if we can find a UK importer and then that's not in Monmouthshire, we might well work with their local trading standards. So we do take the same approach. That to be said, a lot of the time what's printed on them isn't necessarily accurate. MHRA registration, all products should go through that. It is a desktop exercise. I know MHRA are trying to do more to scrutinise things. So that I was in a meeting this week with MHRA, and they were saying exactly how they're trying to improve things as well. But yeah, it's the buck stops with the importer. But if we can't find the importer, then obviously that's the retailer or the wholesaler.
You know, the individual who's just buying for their personal consumption, if they can supersede all that, they just buy it. And
if you buy it for your own consumption from outside, which is entirely possible now, you can buy it for your own consumption, then it's more of and you're not selling it, you're just buying it for your own consumption, then it's going to be more of an educational thing, so that you could say to them, you know, they wouldn't commit any. No, it's the offence is to sell. So if you're buying it for your own consumption, you are importing it. Yes, it could be picked up by customs. Yes, and if it was picked up by customs, they might look at it, or the border inspections that take place.
But you can be any age. You're never going to be challenged on your age, or you might be challenged on your age, and you're just going to say you're 18
potentially.
Yeah.
And there's some support from the industry. Obviously, you've got the industry element where they are pro vape sales and everything, so it's always difficult. But you've also got sort of generally within the industry the recognition that the public sector is up against it, is limited resources, so they are developing ways to support us with that. So Interscientific, who are one of the analysts, they have developed, they're doing a lot of the testing, so they're pulling it all together and created a website so that we can access that information, not necessarily having to wait for test purchases to be sampled and sent off and come back. We can look immediately and deal with it there and then.
You mentioned their resources, didn't you? I mean, are you sufficiently staffed? Are you sufficiently resourced? Leading question.
A very leading question, and considering this, what we're talking about this morning is relatively small aspect of our remit, then yes, I couldn't say that we are.
Right, thank you, Jan. Thank you.
Well, one last thing. I think really until we make it socially unacceptable, like we have with increasingly with smoking, and it's taken time, but it's going down all the time. The number of people actually smoking real cigarettes is going down all the time, and it's all it's partly legislation, but it's partly making it socially unacceptable, isn't it? I think that's another thing that really needs to, I suppose, come up, is the socially unacceptability of it.
Absolutely. I think we'd all join with you on that point. Thank you, Jan. Thank you so much. And thank you for coming along. Dale, you've got a final...
Yes, Chair, and I'll be very brief. Cigarettes smoking is on the decline, and we're not seeing so many cigarette butts on the streets, but they're being replaced by these disposable vapes. What I'd like to know is, how do we as lay people going into a shop tell what is a legal vape from an illegal vape? You mentioned 2mm containers, tanks are what should be sold. Do they equate to a certain number of puffs? Because the one you sent around earlier had 4,000 and then one had 1,000 and stuff. So how do we recognise?
It's a really good question. I would say up until about 6 months ago, anything over about 650 puffs, we'd say, right, that's illegal, that's coming off the shelf. Now it is difficult. We are saying the majority now are selling these legal oversized vapes. I don't like the terminology, if I'm honest, but we are seeing the majority are selling more compliant products. But it is difficult for the average person to know. I mean, looking at the details on the side here, explaining it to the traders, there was a job to do, not educating, but explaining to them. They haven't got legal teams. They're not Tesco or Waitrose or Sainsbury's and things like that. So there was an advice and education role, and it can be difficult for a lay person to know if what they're buying is legal or not. There is information that we can send you, though, if you like. We can distribute that. There was quite a good guide actually produced a little while ago by an association that works with corner shops and the like. We've got the guidance booklet as well that we produced for the retailers. You're welcome to a copy of that as well.
Thank you so much, both of you, Gareth and Rachel, for coming along today and giving us a very informative presentation. We're probably going to invite you back, as we often do, so something to look forward to. Probably give you a 12-month, really, because obviously this thing is a moving feast, really, isn't it? So, but on behalf of the committee, I'd like to convey our thanks for the hard work and diligence that you perform on behalf of the public. We're very grateful of it. Thank you very much. So we'll let you go. One final thing, Tony, on your camera, something occasionally you drop away there, and for about 10 minutes in a meeting, you look like, I don't know, anonymous government whistleblower on Channel 4. You go very dark there, but you're back now. That's the main thing. So, is there an issue with your camera?
I don't know. I'm here, I'm listening, I'm watching.
Okay, good. That's fantastic, as long as you are. Thank you. Look, thank you all. So we're moving on now to number 7 on the agenda, everybody. So that's the Public Services Committee Forward Work Programme and Action List. So I know we need to revise this going forward. I'll leave it to you, Hazel.
Yeah, out of every meeting, Chair, I produce an action list and then I take forward those actions individually with the officers. So unless anybody proposes to go through it today, I think we're a bit short on time because it's 11:20 and we've got the Health Board coming in for past and other members. So unless you've got any concerns, that you could email me directly. I'm happy not to go through it, Chair.
Okay. Is everybody satisfied with that? Any proposals? Thank you both. Any proposals going forward on the work plan, Tony? Especially, I know you're keen to look at that. If we can have continually informal conversations via email or whatever in updating that. But obviously, we need to kind of clarify that going forward. Jill, you've got your hand up.
Just that there's a couple of ongoing work programme ideas I've got I would like to share, but I'll send them through. Shall I to all the group in general?
Yes, please. Yeah, that would be helpful. Thank you. Yeah,
thank you.
Is everybody happy with that arrangement as it stands at the moment? Because we're pressed for time, yeah?
Can I just ask one urgent one though, please? For the mental health services one, can we also include our local officers, the mental health MCC officers, as part of that, so we can understand how they all work together, please, with Mind and everybody?
Yeah, thank you. That's a good point. Yeah, thanks. All right, moving forward. So number 8 on the agenda. So we've got Cabinet and Council Work Planner. Hazel.
Yeah, Chair, that's for noting for members to know what decisions are going forward. Just to remind you that if you have any concerns or you want to see any of those reports, you can approach report authors directly and ask to see those reports or have a discussion with them. And we use that then to table items for scrutiny across all 4 committees.
Thanks, Hazel. Okay. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, we will. Let's get to the. We want to get to the end of this first, Jan. Number 9 on the agenda. So the meetings of the previous meeting held on the 7th of May. So we need a mover and a second.
Am I allowed to say they're correct?
Just Marion, it would be helpful if you could.
I'm happy to move those minutes, Chair.
Okay, have we got a seconder? Fantastic. Yeah, so that's great. Excellent. Yeah, cheers. And then going forward, number 10 on the agenda, to note the date and time of the next meeting, which is the 14th of October, at 10 a.m. However, Hazel and I are always in communication, and if there's any opportunity, I know Hazel thinks I'm ad-libbing a little bit now because this is not something but basically, if there's an opportunity to get some important witnesses forward or whatever, this is a kind of, what I'm saying is that meeting will take place, but we may possibly have other meetings in between if we choose. Yeah, you can.
I'll be on holiday, Chair, so you'll be meeting on your own.
Maybe not. Maybe I've bespoken it.
Just to let everybody know that we did agree that we're going to schedule a County Lines workshop, which will be a closed session. We'll invite all members if you're happy to extend that invitation. But we've got some great officers from the police that would like to talk to you about County Lines. So that will be a session we'll try and set up for early October, end of September, when I'm back from leave and when my colleagues are back from leave. Okay?
Yeah, thanks. That's covered it. Right, thanks, guys. So as far as this meeting is concerned, I guess this is closed. Thank you all for your attendance. Jan, thank you again for the 2 years we've had with this committee, and welcome again to Tony, and we look forward to see you at the next meeting. I guess it only leaves me to say this meeting is effectively officially closed now. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for your patience. And then we may have a break then, and we'll come back for what's the official title of the?
5 minutes, Chair.
You literally, well, it's 4 by my standards, so I think we need to wrap up, Chair.
Yeah, thanks. See you later. Bye.
That was a good meeting.
Yeah. Really was.
And I'll just let them know.